Hey everybody, and welcome back to my channel, and welcome to this week's Friday Reads, where I talk about everything that I read last week, what I'm currently in the middle of, and what I think I'm going to be getting to next week. And we have a lot to talk about, so we are just going to jump right in with the very first book, which is Warrior of the Wild by Trisha Levenseller. So this is a YA fantasy, I believe. Like, it's Viking inspired, but there's no magic, but it's definitely an alternate universe, so I think it qualifies as fantasy. I'm not sure. But in it, our main character, I believe, is exiled and then like from her village and has to be in this very dangerous part of the like country, I guess. Like outside of the walls is very dangerous. And to get back into everybody's good graces, she has to kill this god, I believe. If I sound very shaky on this description, it's because I didn't finish this book. I only made it 22 pages in. And that is because, I have a really hard time with YA fantasy, and this is Viking inspired, so I was like, I really want to try because it's Viking inspired, and that sounds really awesome. And it just didn't work. I didn't really like our main character, and the world building was just really not well done in the kind of way where I was actually screenshotting the book to send to a friend to be like, what even is this? So that's really not good. And so I made it 22 pages, but I was like, no, this isn't going to work out. And I DNF'd it. And then after that, I picked up Cant Even, How Millennials Became the Burnout Generation by Anne Helen Peterson. And this is an adult nonfiction. And this is actually really a history about, like, essentially the author did a bunch of research and came up with the factors that lead to millennials burning out at a much higher rate than any other generation, and tracing back where those factors came from. So it's very much a history. And like, I kind of knew that. And even in the introduction, the author is very much like, this is a history. And also, like, I can't really cover all the different kinds of burnout because it's going to be affected by a lot of different factors like race and ethnicity and socioeconomic class and whether you're an old millennial or a young millennial. So like, I can't cover everything, but this book is intended to be like a conversation starter, essentially. And like, even knowing all of that from the introduction, I still kind of struggled with it because it's very history. And while the writing is definitely serviceable, it's not particularly engaging. And the factors that this author identified, I think are good. Like, I agree that those are definitely factors, but it was also stuff that I kind of already knew. So it wasn't like I was learning anything, really. And so like, I wasn't really learning anything, so it was a little bit boring in that aspect. And the writing itself was a little bit boring. Even it was serviceable, but it wasn't engaging. And by the time I got to the place where I DNF'd it, which was page 170, I was just I just wasn't enjoying it. And I was getting a little bit frustrated that we had, up until that point, put so much emphasis on the factors that lead to like, the like workplace factors that lead to burnout. And I know that that's a big thing for a lot of people, but it felt unbalanced because there's a lot of other factors too. And like, I know at the end of the book, we're definitely going to get into parenting and the parenting factors, but also I was just like, but there's more than just parenting and workplace. And so to have such a heavy emphasis on the workplace just feels incredibly unbalanced to me. And so I wasn't getting what I wanted from this book. So even though like I only had 100 pages left, I decided I just don't want to read those 100 pages, and I DNF'd it. I don't think that this is a bad book. I will say that. Like I said, the writing is very serviceable, and I think that if you're really new to this topic, this is probably a really good place to start, and you're very likely to find it much more interesting than I did because this will be new, interesting information rather than what it was for me, which was like, yeah, I mean, I kind of knew that. So I still recommend it for people as long as you like kind of go in knowing what to expect. And then after that, I picked up What We Don't Talk About When We Talk About Fat, which is by Aubrey Gordon. And this is another adult nonfiction. And it's exactly what you would expect. It's Aubrey Gordon, who is a fat activist, fat justice activist. I don't actually know how she self-describes. She is definitely a fat woman, and she is also very definitely looking for fat justice. And so she has been on the internet for quite a while as your fat friend. She also is a columnist. She also has a podcast with another person called Maintenance Phase, which is how I actually came to know about this book, because I love Maintenance Phase. It is hands down my favorite podcast. And so it's just like, well, if this book is more like the podcast, then like I'm in, because I love this podcast. And it's not really. It's definitely much more personal to Aubrey Gordon, the author, than like the podcast is. Like, it has much more of her personal stories in the narrative. So here's the thing. The first part of this, I was very definitely bored. So probably the first 50 to 75 pages, I had heard a lot of this, because like they were like, a lot of the information was like episodes of Maintenance Phase that they had done deep dives into. And so I was like, I kind of already know all this. And so it was, again, it was a little bit boring. And then after that, it got much better, because we got into stuff that like hadn't been covered by the podcast. And I really liked the structure of how the author would tackle a lot of like each chapter, where there was an opening, like anecdote from her own life, and would kind of get into like what this says about society. And there was like, she pulled in anecdotes from other people, and she brought in research and all this kind of stuff. And I actually really appreciated that specific structure. The only thing I really kind of had a little bit of a hard time was actual like sentence structures, like so how she was putting together her sentences. I did sometimes, personally for me, have a hard time like parsing the meaning. Like, I would have to reread certain sentences to make sure that I understood what was being said. And I think that that's more of a me thing, and like just this very specific style that I like from my nonfiction that this did not quite fit into. But overall, I think it is a good book, and it is very worthwhile, and I ended up giving it 4 stars. And then after that, I went ahead and picked up Library Wars, Love and War by Kuroyumi. And this is a manga series that is based off of a concept by Hiro Arikawa. So I read the first 4 volumes. This is a reread. And this is essentially about like an alternate Japan. And in it, the national government of Japan has a committee called the Media Betterment Committee, and this is essentially a censorship committee. They are trying to censor various materials, and they are like doing raids and forcefully taking like books away from people. And then on the local level, the local government, with predominantly the libraries, are basically like, we don't agree with you on this, and we are going to fight you on it. And so the libraries kind of came up with their own bylaws, and they put together a library defense force, and they fight off the Media Betterment Committee. And enter our main character of Iku Kasahara, and she has joined the library forces, specifically in the defense squad. So she's like in the combat units, and it is her misadventures. This is YA. It is also shoujo beat, so it is like there's romance in this. And this is like, so it's one of those things where parts of it are so ridiculous that I love it. It's so dumb, and I just have such a good time reading it. I just love so many parts. Even as like there are aspects where I'm yelling at our characters because they're just being dumb, but like in the way that you would expect from like kind of a YA kind of, story. It's very, I really enjoy it. It's just really fun. This is my 3rd time rereading it, so I've just been having fun with this reread. Like I said, first 4 volumes, and they were all at least 3.5 stars. And then the last thing that I finished, I finished A Red Rose Chain by Shauna Maguire, the 9th book in the October Days series. So the October Days series is an adult urban fantasy series where we are following our main character of Toby Day. She is half fae, half human, and a knight in the fairy realms, and she is frequently shoved at these really weird problems because she's just really good at solving these really weird problems. And in this book, a local kingdom has declared war on Toby's kingdom, and so Toby's queen declares that Toby is going to be the new diplomat to this other kingdom to try to prevent this war, but Toby is not a diplomat, and things go awry almost immediately. And I finished it, and I really like this book for a number of reasons. Like, I think that this is an excellent book in the series. I think that, like, it's just that thing where we're laying a lot of plot threads for like future books, and this is a reread, so it's much easier for me to see that. We're like developing characters and developing character relationships, and we're doing so many good things, and like expanding the world building even. And there's parts that I hate. So like, first of all, our antagonist is just awful. He's really well written. Like, he's very bigoted, and that part of what he's talking about with his bigotry is so well written. It's very clear that either Shauna Maguire has been the target of some of this kind of bigotry, or she's just very good at research. Because like it's like you change a couple words and I could absolutely see somebody saying this in our world. And it's just very well done, but it means that I hate him, and I hate every time we are in a scene with him, and I hate every time like Toby or her retinue is trying to figure out how to deal with him. Like, I just hate him, which made it really not fun to read. And the other part of it is that I don't particularly like this kind of plot where we throw Toby into this situation where she doesn't know what she's doing and she's just reacting to everything. She can't really form a plan because she doesn't know what she's doing, and so she's just reacting to what's happening. I don't like those plot lines in particular. So even though we were doing a lot of things that are adding to the overall series, this specific book is not my favorite. So I still gave it 4 stars because it really is still very well done. But yeah, not my specific favorite in this series. That's it. That's everything that I read. And actually, I am not currently in the middle of anything because I was working really hard to finish this book before I filmed this video. So I'm not in the middle of anything. So what I plan to read next week, I would like to continue on with my reread of Library Wars. I actually would really love to finish Library Wars in July. So that means I have 3 days to read 11 volumes, and I could do it, and that feels like a lot. They're manga, they're really easy to read, but that still feels like kind of a lot. So I don't know that I'm actually going to be able to do it, but that's kind of the goal. And if that weren't enough, in July, I would also really like to read A Prayer for the Crown Shy by Becky Chambers. This was a gift for my birthday, and I really want to get to it. It's the second book in the Monk and Robot series, and I just read the first one recently and really adored it. So I really want to get to this one. And then after that, when I actually get into August and I'm reading books for the Magical Readathon, the most likely picks are going to be Once Broken Faith by Shauna Maguire, which is the 10th book in the October Day series, because my buddy has already started reading this, so I kind of need to catch up. Or I might pick up Crown Duel by Sherwood Smith, because I have been itching to reread this book. And so, like, any excuse, right? But those are the things that are the most likely to appear next week. And I think that's all I have. So if you have any thoughts or feelings about any of these books, please leave me a comment down below. But that's it. So if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you want to, and until next time, have happy reading, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!